Well, hello. It's Game Methuselah. And my partner Steve.
Hello.
But we need a cooler name for him than Steve. But wanted to let you know, after our last adventure, we often as we're building a campaign, this is not an uncommon way of doing it. You don't know necessarily how many players you're going to get initially. So we started out with the first character. That was the guy who was learning with the DM first night, and we ran a little adventure for him. And then at the end, we get a couple more people to join in. They generate characters, and we keep the adventure moving as if he sort of comes in and finds them, or they join him, and they come back to investigate treasure. Now, as this night goes on, after our last adventure, you saw we got kind of beat up by the rats. So afterwards, the players got the cleric to go ahead and heal them all. A couple of them had off-season points, which are lost. These are all here, points that they don't have until they take a long rest. Now, that can also be healed by a secondary clerical healing, but of course, every time you do that, you have to re-roll the dice, which, as we showed, puts the risk of having these dice lost for good. So if they could take a long rest now, which not going to be very easy to do in a dungeon, they could get them all. So if they were to go to an inn or set a camp, and assuming they don't get eaten by some troll that comes by, they would gain those points back, and they could continue on. The thing we had talked about the fact that points to off-season is some of your wounds are just too severe to be healed up overnight. So this was always the thing that bothered me in the game, because it was just like, doesn't make sense that you could be like a dead, lying there, almost a dead person, a little suddenly a heal, and you take a long rest and you're 100%. Just doesn't make any sense. So that's how we sort of regulate how long you're able to stay out there and adventure. And you can risk it. We've had people who were below half health points going on adventures because they didn't want to go on a long rest and take 3 months for that off season. Because if you do it too soon, the DM might modify the game, because you didn't get rid of all the threats that were there, so it's a little scarier. So put out a little map. As the adventurers are resting up and healing, our rogue notices, hey, something's a little odd. So he makes a roll. It doesn't have any disadvantage or difficulty dice, so it was more than likely a secret door that was pretty well traveled. He finds it easily, and what he finds beyond is this other room. Again, water. There's a little island in the center. Yeah, he's seen things like this, a little spooky, but he sees a chest of treasure. Now, he hasn't gone in yet to explore the treasure, but off in the distance, he sees this little barred door, and he hears behind it a sort of pitiful help. It seems like someone is locked in. They don't sound like they're in good shape, and, well, no one's determined yet what the party's going to do. But what we do in games a lot of times is somebody new will come along, and they're going to want to generate a character and join in our game. In this case, we've generated up a new wizard. Now, we hope that the party will come in and rescue her, maybe, and then the player can get her character into the game. So we'll see how that works. But at this point, I wanted to just give you a sort of look-see of what to sort of expect tonight as far as the game goes. First of all, the creatures. The problem with our little prison, and I don't know whether you can see it well, but take my word for it, these two doors here are forced locked. They cannot be opened from this side. The reason is, it's a trap. They're filled with undead, and the undead will come out if this door is open. So then suddenly there'll be an undead battle of third level, tier 3 level undead. These are pretty basic. You can see on the situation when I put them up, they have the basic 2 times health, which basically means in this case they have 6 hit points. They have very little armor, basically whatever rags they were wearing in their death. Their movement is normal. They have nothing really special. They get 1 attack. And that is at 6 points because they're third level. Now, a real rule of thumb I have for when I'm generating undeads is a tier 1 undead does not accumulate to basically or equivalency of a tier 1 creature. The easiest way to do it, and the way I kind of use it as a dude, is you look at the total hit points of the party sort of versus the hit points the creatures have. So since these undead have 9 hit points, and you look at the maximum of the party, you can expect you're going to see somewhere between 4 to 6. Now you can modify that, better players get more, and thusly, if your players are better, you could make the encounters harder. Now, to go talking about XP, in the last battle you saw, the first encounter was the 2 third level gargoyles. They weren't particularly tough, but they were somewhat challenging, so we would say that was for the group. a normal challenge. And I'm going to sort of change this on the fly because I said it was an easy, but it's not. So I'm going to award them the 10 points, the 10 pop points, which is how we rate our advancement in experience, because the encounter was at equal level. Now, the rat swarm, which I didn't think was quite as tough as it was, but it was a 5th level swarm, and those rats, even though they were 1st level, lots and lots of rats make it very difficult. And the party got mauled pretty bad. It actually looked for a while like it might be a party trash, but it wasn't. So what I would award on that one is 15 pop. So at this point, what our party had accumulated in our last adventure was 25 pop. They've now found the secret door. They see some treasure in there they think that's good. They hear the bemoaning pleas from somebody locked in this horrible dungeon to be let out, and now we'll decide what they'll do. Now, in a case like this, if they were to rescue this character, and they do it with some combination of conversation and then the battle that ensues, depending upon the level of battle, I would then award them an additional 5 points of pop for role playing. The more you role play your characters, the more you can. If it's really challenging and you're dealing with really bad monsters and you convince things to be difficult, you can award 10 points or whatever, but I tend not to go crazy. But in some situations when you're having mega battles with lots of role playing and lots of fighting, you can award whatever you think is realistic. And the more pop you give out, the faster your characters will go up. The second monster we're going to have in our little adventure 2 is this little white. Now the white is 4th level, so it's a little nastier than the other. It's got 16 hit points and an attack of 6. Now the attack is down 1 level. It normally would be 8. But the reason I made it 6 is I gave it a benefit that the player that is hit loses their next action from the chilling touch of the white. Normal movement, no armor class. The problem is the white takes half damage from all non-magical attacks. That makes it really nasty, especially for low-level characters who really, at this point, haven't accumulated any magic. So the last little thing I want to discuss about you is giving out magical items. Now, later in this adventure, depending on how things go, I'm going to give out an epic magical item. I'm sort of known for having this group called the Teeth of the Dragon, which were these magic swords. Well, I have no problem giving them out early. So this is one of the teeth, but nobody knows it. They're going to find this giant two-handed sword, which, because it's a two-handed sword, does +1 damage. The problem is it's a tier 4 weapon, which means most of the fighter right now can carry a 2-tier weapon, which does 2 points of damage. This is much larger and much heavier. So to pick it up, because he's 2 strength levels off, he would get 2 disadvantage or difficulty dice on when he swings, making it very hard. He picks it up, he says, wow, this thing is way too heavy for me. But as he swings it around a little bit, he goes, but strangely, it's not quite as bad as I thought it was going to be. Now, he doesn't know why, and you're surely not going to tell him, but the reason is the sword is magical. And because of that, it has a advantage, or what we would call ease dice to it. So as it is standing there without any affiliation with the sword, without knowing anything about it, it's 1 ease. So basically it treats it as if he was substantially stronger, or it makes it easier for a weaker character. So as he swings it around, instead of having 2 difficulties or 2 dice, he would have only 1. He doesn't know that, and you're not going to tell him. But as he advances and he looks at it, and you can go through, it has been, it's been reforged 3 times, which meant this sword has been broken 3 times, and people have gone to the great effort of reforging the sword. The reason for that is, and how the Teeth of the Dragon were formed, is they are these epic swords. A thrice broken sword is usually destined for greatness. So somehow along the line, if players have heard that in my storyline before or anything, they might know it. Or they just might know it out of mythology or other stories, so maybe they'll say, hey, that kind of means something. There's script on the blade, which the players can't read. They think, well, maybe it's like some kind of old elven or maybe some sort of magical, ancient magic script, but they don't know. They don't know what it says. Well, what it says is Draconis, but nobody knows, and it's going to take a while before they acquire that. Other things, it has open vents of the blade, which are basically slit open portals, so when you swing the sword around, it makes this sort of ghostly, eerie sound. Those will be the singing versions of the sword for the later, so as you acquire new swords or other things, there'll be pluses and minuses. Now, I already listed all this stuff down so you can just look at it. But again, you're not going to tell any of this to anybody. You just give them the basic outline and they can sort of make it or guess. And if they've never heard any of my history before, no one's going to know. But the idea is this is something that you're going to have. So if this person was to get an enlightenment later on using this sword, they could take some enlightenment normal that they wish to make up, or they could say, wait, I want to become more attuned with the sword. And at that point, you would give them an additional piece of knowledge of the sword. Maybe two, depending upon how much of an importance it is. So you could say, hey, that way it gives you other uses for the enlightenment. So as he acquires it, the sword becomes more attuned to him and starts giving him additional abilities. And believe me, these dragon's teeth, once you get down that road, they become pretty nasty. But I'm just going to give you the basics now to sort of let you know how things go. But like I said, I never really feel badly about putting in really, really important magical items or armors or special trinkets or things that they may not necessarily know initially what they're going to do, but down the road they're going to be really important. So something else, like I said, you can look at and you got to see how I started out. I don't give them usually that to read, but you just kind of speak it and let them know, and they can sort of make the figure from there. Realistically, their fighter could go in and semi-competently fight with this weapon. It wouldn't be really to his advantage, but it's a big sword and it does a lot of damage. And if dragons came along, it would do a lot more damage. Anyway, we'll let you know, and we're going to see how this little party goes as we maybe get at least 1 or 2 new players coming into the group, and we'll see how it goes. So we'll be back to talk about this and show you a little adventuring later.